If it's by necessity, then none of them are absolute, because you are forced to agree. If it's by choice, then you can have choice otherwise, not to agree. The possibility is there. So can they disagree?
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Let me just come back.
So there's a God. There are three distinct consciousness. That's how we're thinking of them, which we shouldn't. So if there was a God and say like he could take part of his consciousness and be like just send it into like a physical manifestation and like tell it to walk among men and like so essentially what would happen is like it wouldn't be like there would it's not that like the sun is unable. It's like they all have the same like will. It's like he says he doesn't want to, but like sometimes you don't want to do things that you want to do. It's like it's not that because you have split personalities. It's like
when you say same will, the scripture says otherwise. They have different wills, one submitting to the other. So we have to, as I said, look, you can formulate a theology from philosophy, but we have to have strict connection with the scripture to have our correct philosophical understanding of our theology. So when the scripture says, Jesus is saying, my will is to be saved, but you may will have something different. So not according to my will, according to your will.
But we're still thinking of them as the same person, as the same consciousness, as in the consciousness.
No, there's two consciousnesses from communicating, two different wills in
Two
play.
different wills negotiating or
negotiating.
Yeah.
You negotiate with yourself sometimes. You understand what I mean? It's like they're not like different. Like they're not like.
How can you negotiate?
Completely different.
How can you negotiate when all of you both conscious at the same time? Only when you have a split personality. You cannot negotiate with your own self.
Wait, I can negotiate with myself. As in, like sometimes I want to do this, but I like this is better, but this is like that. So
who are you negotiating with? No, when you're conscious, who are you negotiating with? You're not negotiating with anyone. You are actually just thinking.
You're reasoning.
Your thinking process.
think of it like that.
So you're not actually negotiating with another's consciousness.
Well, you can think of it like that.
And that's what's happening. You are looking at pros and cons of what things. Okay, what if this? What if that? So you're actually looking at reasoning with you. Doesn't mean there is a two centers of consciousness.
So like if I were to say to myself, like if I thought of myself as two different parts, if I had actually like the power to like split myself into different parts, that like
No, if you have, you have two parts of the brain, right?
yes.
If you slit,
Okay, so like so
if you slit the connection in the middle, you will actually have two centers.
Okay, even like I have like subconscious and a conscious, right? So like in my conscious mind, there are like some things that in my subconscious that I don't want to do. They're like there are things I don't want to do, but in my conscious mind, I'll be like, okay, no, this is best. So if my subconscious didn't want to do it, my subconscious does not become like a separate part of me. It's just like it's like.
Think about this way. If you have
I'm not too.
if you have two
In my head.
centers, if you have two centers of consciousness, they're all knowledgeable, all of them equally knowledgeable. There's nothing to dispute
between each
or
other.
discuss because they all know everything. There's nothing to dispute or discuss. Both of them know the pros and cons of everything. There's no way you can have a discussion between these two consciousnesses. Each of them, they're aware exactly like the other.
You as a person are reasoning, but all-knowing consciousness doesn't reason because it knows everything there is to know.
Okay, so if I say like my subconscious was like influencing me, and I don't know all the parts of my subconscious, and then we're saying because of that, that doesn't make me a perfect being.
I'm saying, when you have a concept of God in which there are levels of consciousness which are different in terms of their perfection, it raises the question, how did a center of consciousness become imperfect to begin with? Because a necessary being will have all attributes of perfection. Absolute. You cannot start with a necessary being with imperfect attributes. While there's another being, or another consciousness, if you want to call it in this framework, who is perfect. How can you have a two hierarchy of perfection and imperfection of a necessary being without a beginning? How does it follow?
Okay. Like, I'm gonna go to your religion because I'm gonna borrow some of your like logistics. Okay, so like when like Allah decides to have, if He ever does, decides to have mercy on like people, doesn't that mean like the people affected Him and like He changed His mind?
God in His wisdom, He exercises His attributes of justice and mercy and forgiveness. Okay? He gives people a chance. He gives them the rope to repent.
Okay.
Yeah. So He is not somehow having like two consciousness where He's suddenly.
Yeah, but
He's
He
exercising.
But He decided to give the people chances, as in like He felt
So He
that
knows.
he thought He should give them mercy.
Yeah.
Because the people were like.
Yeah. So there is no conflict with
But from His own will.
knowledge and power
exactly.
and
Yeah,
His
but the people
actions
still
of.
influenced Him, as in He felt
No, it's not people influencing Him. No.
mercy for them.
No, He is totally independent of the people. Totally.
Okay,
Totally.
so
He's in no need of any of the people. We need
Okay,
Him.
okay.
So the way He deals with us
I'm
is for
like-
our needs.
okay, say like you lived your whole life and then you were given a lot of chances, but you just died and went to hell anyway. So like this all-knowing God that knew you were going to hell anyway.
But He knew because of our choices and our actions.
So He didn't know everything before that.
He knew.
Okay, you just brought the issues of predestination, which a lot of people are unclear of.
Yeah.
In Islam, we don't believe that everything is written and that's why we do things. That's not the case. We do things. It's written because we do things. So everything that we do is taken into account in the writing of it.
Okay, so He doesn't know the future.
Let's look at it simply. Okay, we have to, because this is an issue we have to really think about.
Yeah.
Tomorrow is not here for us, right? When tomorrow unfolds to us, we know exactly where we've been, where we've gone, what we've done. It becomes knowledge to us, right? Suppose there is a not unknowledgeable God. Tomorrow, like us, He comes to know. Tomorrow.
What? Okay.
Give an example.
Yeah.
If you have a God that doesn't know everything,
Okay. Yeah.
He knows like we know. So as tomorrow unfolds, this not knowledgeable God knows, and we know. Same again the next week and the month until we die. So all of that time, the knowledge is as the future unfolds to become present and becomes past, the knowledge of the reality is known. We would have no problem with that, this kind of knowledge, right?
This kind of God. Okay.
Yeah, us, not knowledge. The difference between us and the Creator is not bound by the limitation of this time. We are bound by the time, like I don't know the future because I am only able to know the future when the future arrives to me. God sees the past, present, and the future at once. He's not bound by that. That's the difference. In that case, all my life, every choices that I make, every intention that I make,
already know.
and things are manifested from my intentions, whether I go this way or that way, God sees all of that. You can say at once. So His foreknowledge is not He's causing us to choose to go to hell. We choose, He knows it. So at the end of my life, God knows, but He doesn't have to wait for my time to find out. He knows it all already. So the predestination is not something that is already got decided. No, that all of it is based on my will and my choices. That's taken into account.
He's giving you a choice and He knows your choice.
That's taken into account. So when people go to hell, it's because the moment we chose to do the actions of hell is what has been then taking us to these consequences. And eventually, if you have done all these actions, which deserves going to hell,
so like,
you go to hell.
Say like you pray and then He gives you mercy. Does that happen?
God can show His mercy.
Because you pray? Does He show you mercy because you pray?
God has levels of mercy, right? Levels of mercy. One is a general level of mercy for everyone. Everyone has mercy.
Ultimately saying if God already knows what your choices are, why do we need to wait for that time to play out?
We need to, but God doesn't. And it doesn't make God responsible because the choices were ours. So there is another distinction to make. Do we have a free will or not? We believe we have limited amount of free will that God has given us. Without this, you cannot blame for any actions that you do.
My point is, I'm trying to like tie back to
We
the
do have free will.
earlier argument. No, yes, but like,
Yes.
what
Are
I'm
you
trying to say is,
just one second, sorry, because I wasn't listening, so it's not
yeah,
fair that
yeah.
without not listening to you. The brother made a statement here. No, you don't have to apologize. Do you consider yourself that you are forced now to listen to us, or on your free choice you listen?
By my perception, it's free will. But it's all
That's all that needs. Look, if you really think, this is an example I want to give. If you really think your perception is what you think, but actually it's not, that who is stopping you being charitable? You see a person in need, right? Empty your pockets and give it to them. Are you saying really there is an unseen, invisible power stopping you from going to your pockets and taking your money out? Wait. Do you really feel that there is an invisible power somehow stopping you to put your hand in your pocket, in your wallet, take it out and give the money? Have you tried it? Not tried. You see a person in need. You want to give some money so that they can have some food, right? Do you really feel compelled that I can't take my money wallet out? Try that next time.
in the moment that you feel you have the choice to take the action you want to take, it's predetermined. God already knows what you will do in that instant, as you said. You, in your moment, you haven't quite realised what your choices are and what ultimately you decide to do yet. You haven't played out.
But there's a difference.
But is God causing you to choose that?
Exactly.
That's not what the question should be.
Yeah. This is a
We
different
are?
question.
okay.
To go?
Okay, yeah, I do have to go. So far, what I've learned from today is, what I think is, the God is like an absolute. So when He decided, like, and like the Son and the Holy Ghost are also like part of God, but like,
Are they absolute is the question.
I don't think so, because like
Either way, you have problems.
no, they're not. There are parts that actually say they're not. So like what I think happens like, so it's sort of like He made part of Him into a man, gave it restrictions, and then sent it to earth. And so when Jesus died, He actually went back to the Father. So in that sense, that doesn't make the Father a not absolute entity.
The idea of God coming down and incarnating into a human flesh and leaving
not all of it.
and leaving the divine attributes is the problem. It's like this. Suppose you are unknowledgeable.
No, as in,
Just to take this example, suppose you are unknowledgeable. You want to come to earth with a restricted knowledge. You are already unknowledgeable of the future. How do you get rid of this knowledge from you? You already know. The future is already known to
He
you.
knows. Well, yeah.
But when Jesus comes, this is why Scripture is important to reconcile with. The Scripture says Jesus, human beings, anything of the creations, angels, and Jesus doesn't know. The only one who knows is the Father.
Yep.
So how do you understand that? How come he doesn't know when he's already knowledgeable?
But because it's not all of them. It's like the Father is like absolute.
Was the Son unknowledgeable to begin with? That's the essential question.
Okay. Right.
To begin with, if you are unknowledgeable to begin with,
Yeah.
if you're unknowledgeable to begin with, you will always remain unknowledgeable. You will never become ignorant,
Even
for
if you
5%,
want to be.
or 10%, or 1%. You will always be unknowledgeable. So if he demonstrates he's
God
not
is
unknowledgeable,
unable to make part of Himself unknowledgeable.
it's like God making him not God. Does that make sense?
But it's not like
Can God make himself non-existent? No, because it goes against the attribute of God, which is everlasting with no end.
Yeah.
So likewise, if God is unknowledgeable, you can't say then God can become ignorant, because God is unknowledgeable, which goes against any kind of ignorance.
Okay. I don't know. Maybe He didn't even
Think about it. It's a lot to reflect on.
If we can do suicide to kill ourselves from this reality, then the reality or the realm in which God exists is the foreverness. What prevents Him from from taking himself out of that forever.
I didn't follow your question.
Yeah.
If the concept of reality that we have, being alive, we can undo it by killing ourselves with suicide. In God's
If you have to go, that's fine. If you have to go, okay, take care. Just one second. If you have to go, that's fine. Take care, nice talking to you.
Yeah.
Bye bye.
Thank you so much.
No problem, bye.
I'll repeat. In our reality, if by our understanding